Hello there, what is going on everyone? Today we're talking about Star Wars X-Wing the Miniatures game, and could it actually make a return, and not just any return, but a return to Fantasy Flight games. Now, I want to preface this video to say that this is largely speculation. There is a little bit of fact that I'm going to talk about, and I'm going to mostly talk about the way that it could go, and if it did, some ways that it might go. But I'm not trying to say that it's absolutely going back to Fantasy Flight games, because there is no evidence at this time to indicate that that is happening. That being said, this should be a very interesting video, and I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, I'd love to hear from you guys. Let me know down in the comments your thoughts on if you think X-Wing the Miniatures game could come back to Fantasy Flight games, and would it basically have a shot at making a triumphant comeback if it did. So you're probably asking yourself at this point, why in the heck are you saying this? Why would anything like this be happening? Well, for viewers of this channel that have been with me for a little while, you'll know that recently at PAX Unplugged, Fantasy Flight Games announced the Vault series coming in 2026. And while this series is focused on bringing back old, out-of-print board games, it could easily just be the first step in bringing more games that are also out of print. That's why we're talking about this today, and I want to get some of your thoughts. We are also doing 12 Days of Life Day all month. And this is 12 giveaways all throughout the month of December, some of which have happened already, so a lot of which are yet still to happen. If you want to have a chance to enter to win any of those, you just have to be a subscriber and leave a comment on this or one of my other videos. It's as simple as that. Plus, we're going to actually have a winner at the end of this video, so you won't want to miss that. So make sure you watch all the way until the end. So what is the Vault series? If you haven't seen my other video, it is Fantasy Flight basically going to GameFound, which is a board game specific version of a crowdfunding website, very similar to Kickstarter in a lot of ways, except it's a little bit more catering specifically to board games and tabletop gaming. Fantasy Flight has, of course, acquired, well, Asmodee had acquired a lot of CMON properties, including Zombicide and Cthulhu Death May Die. Those two titles have moved over to Fantasy Flight Games, and they will be using GameFound, with Cthulhu Death May Die being the first. And in 2026, this momentum is going to keep going as they launch the Vault series, which is going to be their way of bringing old out-of-print board games back to people and an on-demand sort of, using GameFound as sort of a glorified pre-order system. And that's a very cool and smart, I think, way to approach it. Now, again, crowdfunding always has mixed reactions with people. Some people don't like it, some people do. I happen to like it, especially for things that might not be in terribly big demand, especially in an already crowded board game market, to possibly bring back something old. Now, they did not say what titles specifically they're going to be bringing back. I think one big part of that is they probably want to see what people clamor for. I've seen a lot of people talking about Battle Lore or early editions of Descent, first or second edition. And they did talk about that they'd be, for the most part, bringing games back in their original glory. They're not going to try to do a second edition of these games that they're going to be doing with the Vault series. They're going to basically be bringing them back, maybe with some clarifications to the rules, maybe with a few little bits of polish, but for the most part, they would be the same game. And that sounds like a really cool way to get your hands on a game that you have loved and haven't been able to find for a long time. But this also begs the question, could this mean games like, StarCraft, the board game, or Battlestar Galactica, and things like that would also come back? And the answer to that is almost certainly no, because they no longer have the license to those. The Games Workshop license, some people even mentioned, the tokens, the discs that you would play, like other games like that. There's a lot of really cool games that Fantasy Flight has had over the years, but if it's a licensed game, it's probably not coming back, especially if they don't currently hold the license. And that's really where we get into the subject of today's video, because we're talking about X-Wing, the miniatures game, and, well, they do still have the license to Star Wars games. Whether or not Star Wars games are actually allowed to go onto crowdfunding platforms, and whether or not that extends into Asmodee's agreement with them, is a whole separate discussion, and I don't really know the answer to that. And of course, that's kind of privileged information that they wouldn't necessarily share with the general public, because that's private, and that's part of their deal with Lucasfilm and with Disney as a whole. But if it does allow, or if it can be modified to allow Star Wars games to come to GameFound in some capacity, then it is theoretically possible that X-Wing could make its way to GameFound or into a later iteration of the Vault series. Now, of course, there's a lot of speculation in there because they have said specifically that this would be for board games, and currently X-Wing is not with Fantasy Flight Games. It still exists under the AMG umbrella, even though it is a sunsetted or a complete game at this point. Same thing with Star Wars Armada. Those are, but their rule books and the files and everything are still maintained under Atomic Mass Games. They're not under Fantasy Flight Games at this time. However, if Fantasy Flight Games is going to be the branch of Asmodee that kind of really leverages crowdfunding, then if you were to crowdfund something like X-Wing or Armada or anything like that, or any of these old Star Wars games that were to come back, then Fantasy Flight would be the place to do it. But I don't know if the timing is right to do that. There may be a lot of people that say it's too soon. It might not work just yet. It might take a little bit more time. Plus, this is an untested method for Fantasy Flight Games. While they do have some people, they have brought some people on that used to be at CMON and that also helped run their crowdfunding. Fantasy Flight hasn't gone through this yet, and I'm sure they're going to want something a little bit more safe, and something, and that's, I think, a big reason why they announced the Vault series without any specific games in mind yet, because if they're going to be able to do a crowdfunding effort, it's sort of kind of almost like print on demand at that point, because you're like, how many people we have 5,000 backers. Okay, that means we have to make 5,000 copies. Boom, done. You don't have to worry about warehouse space. You don't have to worry about retailers not wanting to order it. You have people ordering it directly from you, and that's a very cool thing. So that is something that is going to be happening, and that could easily pave the way towards more riskier things and bringing back Star Wars games that are out. And it's not just X-Wing too. Like, there's other Star Wars games that have. I don't know if they would do Destiny, but because of the random, you wouldn't be able to. Or I want this die specifically, but I suppose they possibly could do some variation of that. But I don't think they would do that with Star Wars Unlimited currently, because it would cross over a little bit too much. I don't see them doing that. But maybe the Star Wars LCG. Something like that is also possibilities that they could do. But the interesting thing about X-Wing that I think is most exciting about something like this is that X-Wing has so many versions. It's been around for so long, with the original version and how many starters have they had? They've had so many starters, just under Fantasy Flight, as well as the AMG. They've had the original version. They've had the Force Awakens starter box. Then they had X-Wing 2.0, and then of course the AMG did the 2.5. Highly controversial with lots of rules changes and all of that. There's a lot of different crowds that like different flavors of X-Wing, and if we're looking at the spirit of what the Fantasy Flight Vault project is, it might actually call into question which version of X-Wing would they bring back if they did. We're definitely getting into speculation at this point, and of course, I don't want it to be said that Crabbok is saying that FFG is bringing back X-Wing. This is more of a what if they did, because I think that if they did, it would be a really, really interesting way to do it, to take a look at the first edition and bring back the original version of X-Wing. Now, this is, of course, if they're doing it, true to what they announced that the Vault project was going to be, then that would mean that the first edition might come back in its exact form, flaws and all. I'm looking at you, HWK, with a single attack die, things like that. And maybe that's not something that they'd want to do. They might want to revamp it a little bit. And of course, that's why I think this would be later iterations of the Vault project, because if you're going to bring X-Wing back, maybe a kind of a hybridization of the kind of keeping it close to the original rule set would be a really interesting way to do it. And there's lots of other ways they could do this as well. One really interesting way that I think is kind of go back to the first couple years of X-Wing, what I kind of called the golden age. Before, a lot of stuff pre-Jump Master. It's kind of my version of the golden age of X-Wing, at least for me. But I think you could take a lot of the stuff that existed in that game and bundle it all together. You could even repackage it as an all-in-one package, and almost sell it like a board game. Like if you buy into X-Wing, you pick your faction and you get all of this. You get all of this stuff. And then this is what you have. So maybe you can't run, like 3 Millennium Falcons or something like that, or 3 Outer Rim Smugglers. Maybe maybe it's restructured in a way that there's a set amount of stuff, and and the list building is maybe a little bit more limited. At least for a standard experience. That could be a variation on how they want to do it. There's a lot of different ways that they could do it. I don't know if they'd want to just straight re-release everything exactly as it was from first edition, but again, there's a lot. I don't think there's any wrong answers on how they could do this. And that's kind of why I wanted to get you guys involved and ask you the question, how would you like to see them re-release X-Wing if that's something that they were to do? If the Vault project ended up being massively successful and there was a big enough outcry to say, hey, X-Wing players would love to see this stuff come back. And the biggest problem with making X-Wing was apparently, that it was too expensive and cost prohibitive to be able to continue to maintain all of these lines of miniatures. And if it's now done on a print on demand, and then you can appropriately cost everything, and you won't have to worry about, there would be, I feel like Fantasy Flight could do it with a zero risk situation. The thing to keep in mind, though, is X-Wing at its time was a very cheap game. And when I say cheap, I mean affordable. You were able to get a starter box with 3 pre-painted, pre-built miniatures for $29, once upon a time. You can't do that nowadays. Now it's like $30 for a single miniature, right? Millennium Falcon, I think, was $50 originally, and it's an incredibly detailed miniature. At the time, I believe Fantasy Flight had some kind of wondrous deal with this factory that was making all this stuff dirt cheap, and they were able to, sustain and maintain this game and keep it a pre-printed game, like flowing, and still make a lot of profit while keeping the price really, really low. Well, no deal lasts forever. These things happen, right? But if they're doing it via GameFound or whatever, now all of a sudden they're like, well, we don't know how many people are going to want to buy, another starter or another Millennium Falcon, or maybe a bundle of it now being kind of like an all-in-one box board game kind of miniatures game or something like that. I wonder if that would be like no risk to them at all, because if they don't rise to a certain level, then it doesn't get produced. And if they do, they know that they're only making exactly enough for everybody. And then the cool thing about GameFound is you can also open up a pledge manager. You can also open up late pledges. You can also go back and say, hey, we're doing a second run. There's been enough demand for even more X-Wing, and if it were to kick off. And if they want to at some point, if the demand ends up being that high, then they could make some more and then put them in retail stores too. But there's no need to immediately jump to retail if they're going to just do a kind of a print-on-demand service. And for the again, for all of the homebrew and the community-driven events and stuff that are running this, it'd also be another way to get authentic X-Wing product in people's hands, and that's another really cool thing. Again, I've always thought that there's a lot of things that they could have done to X-Wing to make it a little bit more sustainable, a little bit easier to produce and easier to play. A lot of those things that I'd love to see them do if they were to come back with an all-new edition. Maybe only one cardboard chit per ship size. Maybe all small ships use the exact same chit, the little square ship token, because all firing arcs, exist on every token. You don't necessarily need them shaded. That's on the card. Maybe we don't need a separate card for every pilot and ship combination. Maybe we just have pilot cards and ship cards and stuff like that. And I think early versions of X-Wing that actually had a little bit of that going on with it too. I don't know. It's a lot of things that I'd like to see, but I want to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments section below. Speaking of leaving comments and entering to win the Life Day giveaway, today's winner for our 12 days of Life Day is going to win some X-Wing promos. And that's going to be J Dorfer 2759. J Dorfer, what have you won? Well, you won 2 promos of old and new X-Wing. So we've got a new, technically an A-Wing, and this one is Kyo Venzi in an A-Wing, double-sided. There we go. Well, not really double-sided. That's on the back. And then your other A-Wing promo is going back to 1.0, old school, and that's Tycho Selchu, the greatest A-Wing pilot in the universe. Tycho. Psycho Tycho. 2 promos for you. All you have to do is email me at mailcrabok@gmail.com and let me know what you've won, because we're doing lots of giveaways. I'm going to get everybody mixed up. So let me know what you've won and give me your shipping address and all that good stuff, and we'll get these out to you. Congratulations. If you did not win, don't worry. Anything that goes unclaimed will roll over into Patreon giveaways. So you got 30 days to claim it, and then everything's going to go all over to Patreon, anything that doesn't get claimed. There's plenty more giveaways. You just have to click that subscribe button, like the video, share the video, all that good stuff. But let me know in the comments your thoughts. You have to be a subscriber and you got to leave a comment. That's basically all you got to do. But if you want to do more stuff, you can also go into the description below and you can click on some of those links. You can join our Discord, which we have linked down in the description below. You can also check out some cool stuff for Battle Foam. If you are looking to get some Battle Foam, save 15% with code CrabbokVIP over at battlefoam.com. You can do that. A lot of cool stuff all down in the video description. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Do you think X-Wing, the miniatures game, could thrive once again under Fantasy Flight with this new GameFound initiative and using some version of the FFG Vault, bringing classic games back to life? What do you think? Would that be cool? Is it too little too late? Or should we wait like another 10 years or so it can really become kind of a fan kind of uprising or something like that? I don't know. There's no wrong answers here. Let me know your thoughts. That's going to do it for today's video. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and big thanks to my patrons. Patrons. You guys are awesome. You help make this whole channel. Thank you so much. I will talk to you later. May the force be with you. Live long and prosper. Be excellent to each other. Party on, dudes. So say we all, and always wash your socks.